The discovery. The desert wind carried whispers of forgotten battles as Finn Maddox adjusted his survey equipment beneath the scorching sun. 3 years had passed since the Celestial War ended, leaving behind a graveyard of military installations scattered across the wasteland. His job was simple: catalog the ruins, assess salvage potential, and file reports that few would ever read. The Kepler base had been abandoned longer than most. Finn's boots crunched through sand-covered debris as he documented collapsed barracks and rusted weaponry. The silence felt heavy here, as if the desert itself remembered the violence that once erupted from these coordinates. It was near the old detention compound that he first saw her. At first glance, she appeared to be a statue, an impossibly beautiful figure emerging from a concrete platform like some tragic work of art. But as Finn approached, his breath caught in his throat. This wasn't carved stone. This was living flesh, pale, blue-tinted skin that seemed to shimmer in the afternoon heat. Her torso was free, but from the waist down she was completely encased in solid concrete, as if someone had poured it around her legs and let it set. Her eyes were open. Those eyes, large, luminous, and undeniably alive, tracked his movement as he circled the platform in stunned disbelief. They held depths of pain that made his chest tighten. She was conscious, aware, trapped in this concrete prison with no way to move or escape. "Jesus," Finn whispered, dropping his equipment. He fumbled for his comm unit, then hesitated. Protocol demanded he report all alien discoveries to Central Command immediately, but something about those eyes, the way they seemed to plead without words, made him pause. A local transport rumbled past on the distant highway, and Finn remembered the conversations he'd overheard in the nearest settlement. The truckers and scavengers spoke in hushed tones about the statue girl at Kepler Base. They called her dangerous, a leftover weapon from the war. Some claimed she could kill with a thought, others that she'd tried to infiltrate human minds before they stopped. Her had to be done, one grizzled veteran had muttered into his drink. Couldn't risk letting her loose. Better safe than sorry. But looking at her now, Finn saw no weapon. He saw someone who had been abandoned, left to suffer in silence while the world moved on. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. When he stepped closer, her eyes followed him with desperate hope. "Can you understand me?" he asked softly. She blinked once, deliberately. "Yes." Finn's hands shook as he knelt beside the concrete base. The material was military grade, designed to last centuries. Whoever had done this intended it to be permanent. The thought made him sick. He pulled out his portable scanner and ran it over the concrete. 3 feet thick, reinforced with metal mesh. It would take days to break through with proper equipment, weeks with hand tools. But as he studied her face, the exhaustion, the pain, the fading spark of hope in those luminous eyes, Finn knew he couldn't walk away. "I'm going to help you," he promised, his voice barely audible over the desert wind. "I don't know how yet, but I'm going to get you out of there." For the first time since he'd arrived, something changed in her expression. The corner of her mouth moved slightly, not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement. A tiny flame of hope rekindled in those ancient-looking eyes. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Finn made a decision that would change everything. He wouldn't file his report tonight. Instead, he would return with tools, with supplies, with whatever it took to free the trapped soul before him. The desert held many secrets, but this one, this beautiful, suffering being cemented in place like a statue, deserved more than whispered fears and willful blindness. The excavation Finn returned at dawn, his truck loaded with borrowed equipment from the construction depot in Meridian City. He'd told the foreman he needed tools for structural assessment, technically true, though he'd omitted the part about freeing an imprisoned alien. The weight of his deception sat heavy in his stomach as he unloaded chisels, a pneumatic hammer, and protective gear. Zara's eyes tracked his movements as he approached. In the morning light, he could see more details: the delicate bone structure of her face, the way her blue-tinted skin seemed to have an inner luminescence, and most heartbreakingly, the raw patches where the concrete had chafed against her for months. "I'm back," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "This is going to take time, but I won't leave you here." She blinked twice. A pattern he was beginning to understand meant gratitude. The work was painstaking. Military-grade concrete wasn't designed to yield easily, and Finn had to be careful not to injure her legs beneath. He started with hand tools, chipping away small pieces near her waist where the concrete was thinnest. Each fragment that fell felt like a small victory. By midday, his shirt was soaked with sweat and his hands were raw despite the gloves. That's when he heard the approaching vehicle. Marcus Webb, the regional base commander, climbed out of his Jeep with the measured steps of a man accustomed to authority. His weathered face showed no surprise at finding Finn there. "Morning, Maddox. Heard you've been making extended visits to Kepler Base." Finn straightened, trying to block Zara from view. "Just doing my job, sir. Thorough documentation takes time." Marcus stepped closer, his eyes moving past Finn to the concrete platform. "That include archaeological excavation now?" "I'm assessing structural integrity. This installation shows signs of—" "Cut the bullshit." Marcus's voice was flat. "You're trying to free the alien." The silence stretched between them. Finn's heart hammered against his ribs, but he didn't step aside. "She's been trapped here for months," Finn said finally. "Left to suffer while everyone pretends she doesn't exist. She's contained for good reason." Marcus pulled out his tablet, scrolling through classified files. This creature was captured during the final assault on Terra Station. Intelligence reports suggest she's capable of mental manipulation, possibly telepathic influence. The decision to contain her permanently was made at the highest levels. "Look at her," Finn demanded. "Does she look like a weapon to you?" Marcus did look, and for a moment something flickered across his features. Doubt, perhaps, or recognition of the obvious, suffering before them. But it passed quickly. "What I see is a security risk that 3 years of containment has kept neutralized. And what I see in you is a civilian contractor about to make a career-ending mistake." Before Finn could respond, another voice cut through, the tension. "Actually, what you both see is a patient in desperate need of medical attention." Dr. Nora Blackthorne approached from behind Marcus's Jeep, her medical bag in hand. The base's chief medic had arrived uninvited, but her presence immediately shifted the dynamic. "Nora," Marcus warned, "this isn't a medical matter." "A conscious being trapped in concrete for months isn't medical?" She moved past both men to examine. "Zara, muscle atrophy, dehydration, probable circulation issues, psychological trauma from prolonged immobilization. Commander, I'm recommending immediate medical intervention." Zara's eyes widened as Nora gently touched her forehead, checking for fever. The alien made a soft sound, the first vocalization Finn had heard from her. "She's trying to communicate," Nora observed, pulling out a small device. "Basic translator matrix. Let's see if we can establish dialogue." "Absolutely not." Marcus stepped forward, but Nora had already activated the device. A weak, melodic voice emerged from the translator. "Please, help. So long. Alone." The words hit all three humans like a physical blow. Here was undeniable proof of consciousness, of suffering, of a soul crying out for mercy. Finn looked at Marcus, whose jaw was clenched tight. "Still think she's just a weapon?" The commander stared at Zara for a long moment, then at the partially excavated concrete around her waist. Finally, he spoke. "You have until sunset. If you're going to do this, do it right. But the moment she's free, she becomes my responsibility." Again, he paused. "And God help us all if intelligence was right about her capabilities." The revelation. With Marcus's grudging permission, the excavation took on new urgency. Nora worked to keep Zara stable while Finn attacked the concrete with renewed determination. The pneumatic hammer sent vibrations through the platform, each strike carefully measured to avoid damaging the imprisoned legs beneath. As the afternoon wore on, more of Zara's lower body emerged from its concrete prison. Her legs were pale and withered from months of immobilization but miraculously unbroken. Nora administered IV fluids and monitored her vital signs while the translator device captured fragments of Zara's whispered words. The child had to save. They didn't understand. What child? Finn asked gently, pausing in his work. Sweat dripped from his brow as he knelt beside her. Through the translator, Zara's voice grew stronger as more of her body was freed. Human child. Caught in crossfire. Terra Station battle. I tried to help. Nora frowned, consulting her tablet. Terra Station was the final engagement of the war. Civilian casualties were significant. Tell us what happened. Finn encouraged, resuming his careful chipping at the concrete around her ankles. Zara's luminous eyes closed as the memories surfaced. Through the translator, her story unfolded in halting, pain-filled words. I was liaison officer, not warrior. My people sent me to negotiate surrender, but humans were afraid, angry. They saw only enemy. Her breathing became labored. During final assault, explosion separated child from family. Little girl, maybe 6 years old. Trapped under debris. Marcus had returned and now listened from the platform's edge. His expression remained carefully neutral, but Finn noticed his hands clenched at his sides. I could hear her crying. Zara continued. No human soldiers nearby. I had to choose, leave child to die or reveal position by helping. She opened her eyes, looking directly at Marcus. I chose compassion. That's when they captured you, Nora said softly. Soldiers saw me lifting debris from child. Thought I was attacking her. They fired neural dampeners, paralyzed me before I could explain. Zara's voice cracked through the translator. The child lived. I made sure she reached safety before the paralysis took hold. The silence that followed was deafening. Finn had stopped working entirely, hammer hanging loose in his grip. Even Marcus seemed shaken by the revelation. The intelligence reports never mentioned a rescue, Marcus said quietly, because admitting an alien saved a human child would complicate the narrative, Nora replied, her voice sharp with anger. Easier to label her a threat and bury the truth in concrete. Zara's eyes found Marcus again. Commander Webb, I know your name, you were there at Terra Station. Marcus went rigid. How could you possibly? The child. She had your eyes, your chin. Your daughter, yes? The blood drained from Marcus's face. He staggered backward, nearly falling off the platform. Katie. My Katie was at Terra Station. We were evacuating civilians when the attack began. She went missing for hours. We found her later, safe, but she kept talking about an angel lady who helped her. I held her until human medics arrived, Zara whispered. She was so brave, kept asking if I was hurt. I told her angels don't feel pain. Marcus sat down heavily on a piece of rubble, his head in his hands. The weight of 3 years of guilt and misunderstanding crashed over him like a tsunami. We court-martialed the wrong person, he said finally. Captain Rodriguez was demoted for allowing alien infiltration during civilian evacuation. He kept insisting the alien was helping, not attacking. We destroyed his career for telling the truth. Finn resumed his work with the hammer, each strike now fueled by righteous anger. The concrete around Zara's ankles was the thickest, reinforced with steel mesh that required careful cutting. But, with each piece that fell away, he felt like he was chipping away at something larger, the fear and prejudice that had trapped her here. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Zara's feet finally emerged from their concrete prison. She was free, but their relief was short-lived. Marcus's radio crackled to life with an urgent transmission. Command base to Webb. Central Intelligence is en route with containment orders. ETA 20 minutes. Secure the asset immediately. Marcus looked at Zara, then at Finn and Nora. The weight of command, duty, and newfound truth warred across his features. They'll put her back in concrete, he said quietly. Or worse. Zara tried to stand but collapsed immediately, Months of immobilization had left her legs too weak to support her weight. She looked up at them with those luminous eyes, no longer filled with pain, but with quiet determination. "I understand if you must follow orders," she said through the translator. "But the child and Katie, she deserves to know the truth." "They all do." Marcus made his decision. "Nora, get her mobile. Finn, pack your equipment. We have 19 minutes to disappear before this becomes someone else's problem." The pursuit. The escape began in chaos. Nora fashioned a makeshift stretcher from equipment cases while Finn hastily loaded his truck. Zara's legs trembled with the effort of movement after months of paralysis, but she gritted her teeth and pushed through the pain. Every second counted. Marcus's military jeep roared to life. "Follow me," he shouted over the engine. "I know these desert routes better than any intelligence operative." They formed a small convoy racing across the wasteland, Marcus leading in. His jeep, Finn's truck carrying Zara and medical supplies, with Nora monitoring their patient's condition from the passenger seat. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sand, providing some cover as they navigated between rocky outcroppings. "How are you holding up?" Nora asked, checking Zara's pulse as the truck bounced over rough terrain. Through the translator, Zara's voice remained steady despite her obvious exhaustion. "Freedom is worth any pain. But why do you risk everything for me?" "Because it's right," Finn replied simply, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Because you saved a child, and they punished you for compassion." Their radio crackled with Marcus's voice. "Intel convoy spotted on the main highway. 3 vehicles, military escort. They're moving fast." Finn's heart sank. The intelligence forces had advanced tracking equipment, aerial support, and unlimited resources. Their small group was outmatched before the chase even began. "There's an old mining facility in Sector 7, Marcus continued. "Abandoned tunnels, multiple exit points. If we can reach it." His transmission cut off as helicopters appeared on the horizon, black dots against the orange sky that quickly grew larger. The distinctive whine of military rotors filled the air. "They've found us," Nora said grimly. Zara struggled to sit up, her luminous eyes fixed on the approaching aircraft. "Stop the vehicle." "Are you insane?" Finn accelerated instead. "We need to keep moving. Please, trust me." There was something different in Zara's voice. Not weakness, but a quiet power that hadn't been there before. "I can help, but you must stop." Against every instinct, Finn brought the truck to a halt. Marcus's jeep skidded to a stop beside them, dust swirling in the desert air. "What the hell are you doing?" Marcus demanded, jumping out. "We have maybe 2 minutes before those choppers are on us." Zara placed her hands on the truck's dashboard, and suddenly the air around them began to shimmer. It wasn't visible light bending. It was something deeper, affecting perception itself. "My people's gift," she explained through the translator. "Not mental manipulation as your intelligence believed. Healing, protection, the ability to shield those in need." The helicopters passed overhead, their searchlights sweeping the desert, but somehow, impossibly, the beams seemed to slide past their position without detecting them. The aircraft continued their search pattern, moving farther away. "Optical camouflage," Marcus breathed. "Empathic resonance," Zara corrected. "I project the feeling that nothing important exists here. It works better when protecting others than protecting myself." They remained hidden for another 20 minutes while the search moved to other sectors. But Zara's effort had cost her. She was pale and trembling, clearly exhausted. "I cannot maintain this much longer," she admitted. That's when they heard the civilian scream. A family's vehicle had broken down on a nearby ridge, parents and 2 young children stranded in the desert as night approached. But worse, one of the children had fallen from the rocks, lying motionless at the bottom of a steep ravine. "We have to help them," Nora said immediately. "We can't risk exposure," Marcus protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Zara was already struggling out of the truck. "The child is hurt. I can sense it from here." Despite her weakened condition, She insisted on approaching the ravine. The family saw her coming, an obviously alien figure moving through the darkness, and the parents instinctively moved to protect their remaining child. "Please," Finn called out. "She's a healer. She wants to help." The injured boy, no more than 8 years old, had suffered a severe head trauma from his fall. He was unconscious, breathing shallow, beyond what Nora's medical supplies could address. Zara knelt beside him, her hands glowing with a soft blue-white light. The luminescence spread from her palms to the child's injured head, and miraculously, his breathing steadied. The swelling reduced. His eyes fluttered open. "Mama," the boy whispered. The parents stared in stunned silence as their son sat up, completely healed. The mother fell to her knees beside Zara, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." But their moment of triumph was interrupted by the sound of approaching vehicles. The intelligence convoy had triangulated their position based on the family's emergency beacon. Colonel Hayes stepped out of the lead vehicle, flanked by armed operatives. His face was a mask of cold efficiency. "Commander Webb, you're under arrest for theft of classified assets. Dr. Blackthorne, Mr. Maddox, you're both in violation of the Alien Containment Act." The family, witnesses to Zara's healing, stood between the operatives and their targets. Other civilians from the nearby settlement had arrived, drawn by the commotion. "This woman saved my son's life," the mother declared loudly. "She's not a weapon. She's a healer." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the growing crowd. Word was spreading, carried by comm devices and social networks. The imprisoned alien was actually a savior, a being of compassion who had suffered for her kindness. Colonel Hayes raised his weapon. "Disperse immediately or face charges of interfering with a federal operation." But Zara stepped forward, her voice clear and strong through the translator. "No more hiding. No more fear. If you wish to imprison me again, do so in the light before witnesses who know the truth." The crowd pressed closer, civilians with recording devices documenting every moment. The colonel found himself facing not just 4 fugitives, but an audience of growing public support and the undeniable evidence of Zara's healing abilities. The pursuit had become something much larger. It had become a reckoning. The bridge 3 weeks later, Finn stood in the gleaming halls of the United Nations complex in Geneva, watching as delegates from dozens of worlds gathered for what historians would later call the Compassion Accords. The transformation had been swift and extraordinary. What began as one man's act of mercy had become the foundation for interstellar diplomacy. Zara sat at the central table, no longer the broken figure, trapped in concrete, but a radiant ambassador whose presence commanded respect. Her recovery had been remarkable, aided by her people's natural healing abilities and the care of human medical staff, who now understood her true nature. The public revelation at the desert confrontation had ignited a global movement. Video footage of Zara healing the injured child had spread across every network, exposing the injustice of her imprisonment and the potential for cooperation between species. Colonel Hayes found himself reassigned to a desk job while investigations into alien detainment practices began worldwide. "The preliminary reports are encouraging," Dr. Nora Blackthorne said, joining Finn at the observation deck. She now served as Earth's chief medical liaison for interspecies health initiatives. Zara's people have agreed to establish healing centers on 12 worlds, including Earth. Below them, Marcus Webb, now wearing the insignia of a promoted general, presented security protocols to ensure the safety of alien diplomats. His transformation from captor to protector had been as dramatic as anyone's. The guilt over his daughter's rescue had driven him to become the most vocal advocate for alien rights within the military. "How's Katie adjusting to all this?" Finn asked. Marcus had recently reunited his daughter with her savior. The 8-year-old girl had hugged Zara with fearless affection, calling her "my angel lady," just as she had 3 years ago. She started a pen pal program with young aliens from 12 different worlds, Nora laughed. Apparently, compassion is the universal language at any age. The formal sessions were impressive, But it was the quiet moments that mattered most to Finn. He watched Zara during breaks, seeing her interact with delegates who had once been enemies. Her ability to heal extended beyond the physical. She had a gift for mending the wounds of mistrust and fear that war had left behind. "Mr. Maddox?" A young intern approached with a tablet. "Ambassador Zara is requesting your presence in the closed session." Finn made his way to the smaller conference room where the real work was being done. Representatives from Earth, the Celestial, Coalition, and 3 other allied worlds were hammering out the details of permanent peace treaties. "Finn," Zara's voice was warm through the universal translator that had replaced her crude communication device. "Please, sit with us. Your perspective is needed." "I'm just an archaeological surveyor," he protested. "This is way above my expertise. You are the man who saw a soul in suffering and chose compassion over convenience," replied Ambassador Vexhai of the Celestial Coalition. "That makes you exactly who we need." The negotiations had reached a critical point. Some human factions still argued for restrictive measures against alien visitors, while certain alien groups demanded reparations for wartime atrocities. The room buzzed with tension as old grievances threatened to derail the progress. "If I may," Zara stood, her luminous eyes reflecting the conference room's lights. 3 weeks ago I was imprisoned in concrete, forgotten by both our peoples. Today I sit at this table because one human chose to see beyond fear and prejudice. The question before us is simple. Will we choose the path of Finn Maddox, or will we choose the path of those who left me cemented in place? Her words cut through the political posturing like a blade. Finn felt heat rise in his cheeks as every delegate turned to look at him. "I didn't do anything special," he said quietly. "I just couldn't walk away from someone who needed help." "That," said Ambassador Vexhai, "is precisely what makes it special." The deadlock broke. Over the following hours, agreements were reached on refugee assistance, cultural exchange programs, and joint scientific initiatives. The Healing Centers project was approved unanimously, with Zara designated as the first director of interspecies medical cooperation. As the formal ceremonies concluded, Finn found himself alone with Zara on one of the building's observation terraces. The city of Geneva sparkled below them, lights twinkling like stars brought down to earth. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Your choice to free me? Your life has become so complicated." Finn considered the question. His quiet surveyor's life was indeed over. He'd been appointed as special advisor for alien integration, traveling between worlds and helping establish protocols for peaceful coexistence. It was exhausting, overwhelming, and nothing like the solitary work he'd once preferred. "No regrets," he said finally, "though I do miss the simplicity sometimes." "Compassion is never simple," Zara replied, "but it is always worth the complexity it brings." Above them, the first passenger shuttle from the Celestial Coalition made its descent toward Earth's atmosphere, a sight that would have been impossible just months ago. Children would grow up in a universe where multiple species worked together, where healing was shared freely, and where the color of one's skin or the shape of one's eyes mattered less than the kindness in one's heart. "The desert still calls to me sometimes," Finn admitted. "All that silence and space." Zara smiled, an expression that had become more frequent as her trauma healed. "Perhaps we could visit together sometime. I would like to see where my freedom began." They stood in comfortable silence, watching as the stars emerged in the darkening sky. Somewhere among those distant lights were worlds now committed to peace, species learning to trust one another, and countless beings who would never know the fear and isolation that Zara had endured. The girl who had been cemented in place, like a statue, had become the cornerstone of a new age, and it had all begun with one person's refusal to look away from suffering, proof that the smallest acts of compassion could reshape the galaxy itself. In the end, freedom wasn't just about breaking concrete. It was about breaking the barriers that kept hearts separated, one act of mercy at a time.